Well, I think that if we lose the power of deep language, we lose the power of abstraction, representation, we become very literal. And when we're very literal, then things sort of just be, this glass is a glass and this cup is a cup, and we don't have a larger idea, for example, that they are both receptacles for holding drinks or holding water. And that's the basis on which we try to tell, okay, your case is actually similar to the other case, and if we want to be consistent, if we want to be fair, right, we have to recognize that if we treat so-and-so in one way, we ought to treat you in the same way too, right? Otherwise, we're kind of just looking at it and we're kind of saying, well, you're two men wanting to have sex together and you're a man and a woman wanting, and you are different. Of course you're different, because in a literal sense, you are, these two cases are different. But if you're able to abstract, right, and generalize and step back, and these are two examples of loving relationships. But once you can see that those are the same, then you realize how you need to treat people fairly across what would appear to be, on the face of it, in a shallow way, quite different things. And equally, I think sometimes you look at two things that look quite the same. Both of you are the same race, therefore, you must both be wonderful people, right? Or dreadful people. And yet, if we step back from it and we ask, what are the qualities that make people good or make people bad? Then we realize they might not be linked to immediate, literal and visual similarities. We are often fooled by this, isn't it? We go into a room and we see someone. I find I do it as well. I go into a room, I see someone. There's an Ang Mo, and then there's an Asian-looking person, and I kind of immediately assume the Asian-looking person is the one that maybe I have some connection with. I do think that losing the power of abstraction and representation, or losing a sort of a working relationship with abstraction and representation over a long period of time can result in our failing to see underlying principles that tell us when things are really the same and when they're really different for purposes of being fair. And being fair, I think, is what underlies correct intolerance and correct tolerance. Well, I think that we need to change the way we think about tolerance, right? Because every organized society is built on intolerance, counterintuitive as that seems, right? When we say we have certain norms of behavior or certain things that we expect out of each other, we are saying that we are intolerant of those who breach those rules, right? So actually, intolerance to me is the flip side of having values and having standards of some sort around which we base ourselves, right? And equally, it's always problematic when people hide behind the language of values to be intolerant and to be prejudiced. The question, it seems to me, that is relevant is not whether we're getting more or less tolerant, but what are we becoming tolerant about or intolerant about, and are the things that we are intolerant about justified? Or have we gotten to the point where we are perhaps irrationally, illogically intolerant? On that score, I would actually suggest that certainly in Singapore, I don't know how to speak for perhaps the rest of the world generally, but certainly in Singapore, if anything, my guess is that what we're seeing is that we, over time, as a society, we have changed what we are intolerant about. I would say that 10, 20 years ago, we were maybe intolerant about open criticism, open disagreement. Today, we are much more tolerant of that, which actually to me is a great thing. It's a good thing that we're moving towards that. But because of that, as a necessary corollary, we're therefore seeing people disputing more in open, being perhaps more critical of each other in the open. And it is that transition from intolerance about one set of things into intolerance about arguably a different set of things that is making people uncomfortable, right? As long as we were extremely intolerant about people who spoke up, then we had the seeming impression that everybody loved each other, but it was of course total bullshit and nonsense. I'm an educator, and I would obviously like to think that education is the forum where we can inculcate, or at least help to get good habits of thinking and working through questions. I do think it's possible, but I have seen enough instances where education becomes about imposing yet another straitjacket, that I know that there's a wide variation based on who does the teaching and what their philosophy is about what teaching is. So I am very skeptical about sort of saying, let's have a syllabus or a topic list of some sort, and let me put that into the hands of people who don't necessarily always, haven't themselves perhaps grown up being exposed to certain ways of working through problems. And let us hope that because the topics say thinking critically, etc., that somehow taught by and transmitted by someone who may not necessarily have felt free to do that themselves, it'll somehow just get through to the next generation. I think we have to be patient about this. Before we inflict all of this on the next generation and think that we have a magic bullet in a list of great topics, I think let's try and each of us learn. Let's try to build that society now among adults, and then hopefully we have generations of adults who understand that this is how one works through problems, how one discusses differences in a useful and meaningful way, how one helps each other to understand where we're each coming from, so that we both together collectively come to a better decision together. And if we can all do all of that, and also learn how to be fair, etc., then maybe some of us who also understand how to teach can then be unleashed on the next generation. But until we know that, I'm worried. I've seen, in the name of education, a lot of things that actually just end up being, let's put that cookie cutter down and let's seemingly put people in a different shape, and then all we do is we turn out a bunch of kind of flat, outwardly similar biscuits, right? Rather than functioning, growing, mature people. Yeah.
I think we're heading towards a more complicated future. Several things are happening. At one level, government is clearly attempting to retreat a little bit from being the one entity that sets all the behavioral patterns for Singaporeans. I think government recognizes that if we're to be a mature society, then civil society must step in with different elements of civil society creating their own OB markers, as it were, and not government setting it. So on one level, government is retreating, allowing civil society to flourish, and you're going to see more tensions arising until elements in civil society know how to deal with it. At another level, with globalization, we are seeing an integration of global communities everywhere. People across the whole Arab Spring are linked with each other by social media, etc. But at the same time, what people are also realizing is that with globalization, tribal mentalities are growing too. People are forming themselves into smaller, distinct groups, perhaps as a reaction to globalization. So on one hand, we're feeling we are the world, we're part of each other. And on the other hand, we're also feeling at another level of identity, we identify ourselves as smaller units. And so we will see, I believe, more tension in Singapore, more fault lines, maybe not major earthquake lines along race and religion, but smaller cracks and fissures along culture wars, as has been said. I think the rest of the world, it's definitely, the fault lines are increasing, for sure. But at the same time, you also do have a stronger sense of civil society that's grown up over time. So if you don't take, say, countries where there is a weak civil society, if you take, say, Middle Eastern countries, you take Arab societies, the fissures that are now growing up there, the fault lines there are getting very, very serious. But if you take New York City and you see all the different culture wars there, you also know it's a pretty stable state because everybody is always arguing against each other. But there is a celebration of diversity. And that's something that we need to have here. Not just be tolerant of people that we don't like, beliefs we don't like, but we must accept that beyond tolerance, diversity is a virtue for its own sake. And that's why I think the term cohesive diversity isn't actually a contradiction in terms. You can be cohesive and diverse at the same time. We don't have that. We have a certain amount of uniformity, and we have everybody believing little strict things, and we tolerate each other, but we don't celebrate the diversity. Media plays an important role because of the subliminal effects of media, of entertainment, not just news, but very much entertainment. Entertainment has a powerful influence on shaping our predispositions towards various things. And so I think media has a huge role, but I don't think it can be an officially sanctioned sort of thing. I'm not sure that we should, by simply saying that we must have special programs that inculcate a particular value, I'm not sure you're going to get it because people are pretty smart. They can see when it's a propaganda message. But I think if people who are in media, like yourself, like people in entertainment, you truly believe that, and you believe that in everything you do in your daily life, in the programs that you put out, you have a responsibility to inculcate an ethos of diversity, and you genuinely believe it, it will get out there. So the role is very important, but the role is not an official role. The role must be because you happen to be in media, but you happen to believe in it. If somebody else is a school teacher and they believe in the values of diversity, the effects are also powerful among the class of students that that teacher will have. So it's a very individual responsibility, and you cannot simply say, I don't need to think that I have to do this because, well, the government's going to do it, and there's APBS money that's going to be $40 million to promote a series of Channel 8 programs where we must have in every program 8 messages about tolerance. That's not going to work. It must be everybody believing in it, and in everything we do, we celebrate it.